Welcome to the children's book illustration demonstration. I am currently in Adobe Illustrator and I'm going to open up the children's book template. We'll go to File, Open, and then it's going to be an AI file. Make sure you're opening this in Adobe Illustrator. And this is a template that I've made for this project specifically. You'll see I put page numbers just so we can kind of keep track of the pages. And then you can scroll up and over and you'll also see the cover and the first page here. Now, if you want to view all of the pages at once, you can easily just zoom on out here. So I can go out even further. And then I should be able to see all of my pages at once. Sometimes that's nice. And something else to keep in mind is that the white area here, that's technically all transparent. It's not like a white background. So I'm going to actually go up to View here, and I'm going to look for Show Transparency Grid. And then that's going to give me the transparent outline, basically showing where the transparency is. You may want to do this as you're working. I'm not going to keep it on the whole time, but I found it really useful if you're like working and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, this is transparent. We don't want that transparent. We want this to be, each of these boxes to be filled with something. So I'll go back to View and then just hide transparency grid, but it shows you kind of how that works. Now, the other thing is that this space in between the red line and the edge of the page, that's what we call bleed. Now, you can actually fill up that space if you wish to, or you can just leave it blank. What will happen is it's just going to be a white outline then if you leave it blank. If you go all the way to the edge, then more than likely your images will be printed pretty much edge to edge, right? I want to make sure that you understand that bleed means that this could potentially be cut off. So it's kind of like a little bit of padding. So you do not want to put anything super important in that bleed area. So just be careful of that. The other thing you might want to consider doing is actually starting with your first page instead of starting with the cover, because the cover might change slightly depending on your illustrations that you do on your pages. It's here, it says first page or intro page. So you can kind of think of it as like, maybe it's just going to be an intro with the title of the book and then maybe your name on it. And then maybe the next page will be the actual first page of your story. We're going to talk about a couple different things, first of all. So I showed you that transparency. So the first question I get from a lot of students is like, well, how do I change the background color? And it's a little different in Illustrator compared to Photoshop. I'm going to go to the rectangle tool and I'm going to click and drag. And for this one, I'm just going to do just the white area. It'll kind of naturally want to go to that edge. It kind of locks on, and that's what I want. And it's just white right now because that's the color I have selected. I'm going to go over to my properties just because I like to kind of keep everything organized over here. And then I could choose, whatever color I want for my background. We'll just say, I don't know, actually, let's do green or something for now. And I'm going to turn off the stroke because I don't want an outline. If you did want an outline, you can see how that works, but I don't want an outline. Okay. Now, it did cover up that text. Let's imagine that I want to send this to the back of everything. I'm going to right click with my mouse and I'm going to go to Arrange and then Send to Back. So here now it's on the back. I don't need to mess around with it. It's pretty much ready to go. And the other thing that you might want to consider is actually locking this. So I didn't make a new layer for this one, but what you can do is in between the eye and like the little stripe here with the color, you're going to click right there and it's going to lock. Now, what that does is if I go in and I'm trying to, edit stuff, let's say I'm going to edit, make a couple shapes on a new layer here. Let's make a couple shapes. Fill it with different colors so we can actually see it. Okay. Traditionally, if this was not locked, so I'll just unlock it here. If I go in and I'm trying to grab stuff, it doesn't know if I want to grab the background or this piece. And so sometimes you accidentally end up grabbing something you don't want to grab. So that's why locking it is such a good idea, and doing other things on separate layers. That's really the purpose of layers in Illustrator. So lock your bottom layer if you know for sure you're happy with it, and then create a new layer down here, and that will allow you to edit things independently. So then if you're happy with this, then you could lock that, do another layer, and you're going to end up with probably quite a few layers just because you're working on all of these pages. All right, next up, I'm going to delete that shape there. We're going to talk about Pixabay. So you are allowed to use Pixabay images for this, and I've downloaded a couple characters right now. So I'm just going to show you how to kind of build your pages as you go along, especially if you're using Pixabay. So I've already downloaded my images from Pixabay. I'm going to go to File, and then we're looking for Place. And here are my characters. I just kind of found a couple random ones. Double click here, and then I'll just click here. Okay, we'll basically squeeze him down here. We don't want him to be too big. I want him to fit on the page. And then I'm going to do File, Place for my next one. Now I wanted to show you, especially with these two, because they're good examples of this, how one with transparency looks compared to one without transparency. So this pink one here obviously has the transparent background. This one does not. So I have a few options here. Right now it kind of looks like I just copied and pasted this one. It does not look like I did anything to it. It's kind of boring. It's not very engaging. So what I'd probably do is open this in Photoshop, and that's where opening up Photoshop is going to be kind of a nice thing to have if you're trying to do some illustrations, digital painting, things where you're trying to remove backgrounds, more of the photo editing, any kind of photo work you're going to do in Photoshop. Illustrator, you can do a lot of work in Illustrator. It's just less about, you know, doing a digital painting and more about graphic design, if that makes sense. So in Photoshop here, hopefully this will open, I can open up my character and then I'll see if I can erase that background and put it into Illustrator. There we go. So I'll open up my guy here. I'm going to grab my magic wand. We'll erase that background. Now I'm also going to erase on the inside of his glasses because I want that to be transparent as well and in between his legs. Okay. Now I'm going to say File, Export, and then we'll say Quick Export as PNG, and then I'll just say Save and Replace. We're not going to mess around with that. Okay. Now I can go back. You can just say yes because I updated it. There you go. All right. So if I need to place it again, I could just say File, Place, but because I saved it as the same name, now it has been turned transparent. Okay. I'm going to delete this text layer. Just have to unlock that layer. So if something doesn't let you delete it, it's just probably because it is locked. Now I'm going to press delete on my keyboard. Okay. So I have some characters here. There we go. I'm going to lock that bottom layer again. And now I have to think about my typeface. So my typeface is a big part of this assignment as well, making sure your typeface is readable. It should be a typeface that makes sense for your story, making sure that it is large enough but not too large. So I'm going to make this just a little bigger. Let's go to like 36. We'll just start there. And we'll just make up a story here because this is made up anyways. Once upon a time, and I'll do 3 dots. There were 2 monsters there. Now, you could leave it as this typeface. However, I'm going to strongly recommend you be a little more creative with this. So highlight your text and feel free to download typefaces. If you don't see your typefaces, you may just have to go to Window, Character. It should be under your properties, and then here is where you can change the typefaces. And then you can download them as well if you want to. So I'll just choose a typeface that works for me here. I like this one. That's kind of fun. Kind of a chunky typeface. And I might highlight 2. Maybe this is going to be like accounting book. So I'm going to highlight the word 2 to really make that stand out. There were 2. Let's go a little brighter. Just like more of a royal blue or something. A little closer. Still not enough contrast. Let's go to white and see how that looks. There, that's pretty good. Okay, now I can still resize this and mess around with it, but you're going to want to try and keep some continuity on your design and your text. So if you're going to do this kind of text here, chances are you're also going to do that kind of text over here. So that's where you can actually do Control-C on the text and Control-V. You can duplicate that, move this over here. And then from here, I can just erase this and say, you know, the 2 monsters, or maybe it's going to be, there are 2 monsters. Yeah, we'll say the 2 monsters were going to school for the first time. There. Okay. Now you see how it's the same typeface, same size, same color. I'm not going to mess around with the size of this because I want to try and keep it similar to the first page there. So all of your pages should have similar typeface. They should have similar graphics, similar illustrations, same style. So I'm not going to like hand draw the characters over here, right? Because I already have the characters here. So I can easily duplicate these though if I go to Control-C, Control-V, do something like that. Now here's where you can really have some fun with this. And before I really get into it, I'm just going to say File, Save, and save this because I want to be able to come back to it in case it crashes. I'm going to go to Photoshop. I'm going to go File, Open. We're going to open up this character. Now, again, this is a Pixabay character, but I liked this one because I could easily change the mouth, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to grab my lasso tool here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of editing here. We're Photoshopping, and that's kind of the fun part of this assignment. I'm going to go around the mouth, okay? I'm going to do Control C, Control V. I just basically made a new layer, so it's on its own layer. Layer 1 is still there. So I'm going to go to Select, Reselect, because I want that selection again. I'll turn off Layer 2 so you can see it. With Layer 1, I have that highlighted. Now I'll press Delete. Okay, and then when I bring that back, it goes back. Now, the body of this little character monster guy, I'm just going to select that color using the eyedropper. We'll deselect that selection, and then I'll just fill in this gap right there. So it's pretty much filled in. There's a little bit missing there, so I'm just going to keep clicking. And then if there's any extra spaces, like there's a tiny little space there, I'll just fill it in. So now it doesn't have any mouth, but it does technically. Now let's say I want to make this monster look kind of sad. I can easily just do Control T on the keyboard and rotate that mouth now, turn it upside down, make him look kind of sad. And I'm going to get rid of that border around the outside of the mouth. So there's just a little bit of a pink border, if you can see that. So I'll go there. I'm going to delete that pink border. We'll turn that back on. There you go. Okay. So now I can say, you know, maybe I'll just say File, Export, Quick Export as PNG. We'll say Sad Monster. So you can take your characters, and I mean, I'm more than encouraging you to take characters and edit them according to your needs, and, you know, make their eyes close or make their expressions change. Maybe they change colors, and a lot of cool things you can do with that. And that took me what, like maybe a minute, not even, to do that. It was pretty quick. Okay, sad monster. Maybe this monster is really sad to go to school for the first time, or maybe really worried about it. And I'll delete that one. Okay. The other thing too is with backgrounds, you can find those on Pixabay. If you don't want to illustrate, once again, you're allowed to do that. So, you know, maybe you're like, hey, I'm looking for the interior of a home or something. Feel free, you know, to type that in. I just found this sofa living room one. We're going to click download here. It'll let me. There we go. Download. We'll go to Adobe Illustrator. We'll say File, Place. It's still downloading. So slow today. The internet's really slow. And then once you get into Illustrator, or once it downloads, hopefully, come on, holy mackerel. It's just freezing on me. There we go, okay. Here we go. Once again, resizing. So I kind of showed you how you can do some editing outside of Illustrator. Here we go. And then I believe I can do object crop image. So from this one, click OK, that's fine. So this one, I know it needs to be more of a square. So I'm going to just crop the edges of this to make it more of a square. I'll hit enter. Now it's been cropped. Go up here, and then I can stretch that out even more. So now it doesn't warp my image. Perfect. Okay. Now, again, if I'm going to do a lot of editing of colors, changing things like that, I need to do that in Photoshop first. Illustrator is really not the place for that. But I do need to send this backwards. So I'm going to right click on this and say Arrange, Send to Back. Okay. And then I have to think about, right, my type. My type's kind of conflicting with this color there. So I might have to play around with the spacing. It's safe here. You just don't want to go beyond that edge. Maybe I want the text down here. I don't know. You can kind of play around with it. Or maybe I want to mess around with, instead of the size, mess around with the spacing of things. Maybe I want were to be down here. So it's kind of a lesson in layout design here too. Maybe I'll put monsters on its own line too. We'll put monsters were. There we go. There, something like that. Not too shabby. I could add a stroke on this too. So sometimes stroke will help letters stand out a little better. And if you don't like that, you don't have to, but it's kind of nice to sometimes have a stroke on there depending on the colors you're using. Okay. And there are lots of other things I could do here. I could still use the pen tool, the shape tool. I can, use the brush tool. I can trace things. Just remember, when you're using Pixabay images, you're allowed to use them. You just need to do something to them. So, here with the character, I went ahead and added another character next to him, right? And I put him on a different color background. So I did something to him. This one, I changed his face. This background I used, I put the character on top of the background. So I'm still changing things. You can change colors, you can crop, you can do all sorts of things to just kind of make it more your own. But you're not allowed to just go to Pixabay and slap a photo in there and say, I'm done, and that's it. And do that for every single page. That's not really the point of this project. It's not just a scrapbook, right? The other thing too is if you get towards the end and you're like, oh my gosh, I need more pages or something like that, let me know and I can help you with actually adding more artboards in here, especially if you just need a couple more. Generally, we're trying to keep to the 20 pages, but if you need more, I'm not going to say no, because I understand sometimes you just need a little bit more to convey your message or your meaning. 20 pages really isn't a whole lot. So I'm just going to say file save here. And actually what I'll probably do after it saves once, I'll also do file save as, and I'm going to add a 2 at the end of this next one, especially because this is such a big project. We don't want to fall too far behind. So I'm just going to do that. There we go. And then I saved it again. We're ready to go. And now I can come back to this and work on it later on.